Right folks, so obviously we're restoring this old Land Rover 110. It's a Defender 110 200 TDI. Anybody that hasn't followed along, basically we bought it and it was a good runner. It didn't look that bad. We only paid £1,900 for it. Now the chassis needed some plating and the bulkhead, the old bulkhead, I'll actually go to the old bulkhead. The old bulkhead's here. So the driver's side was rusty. It didn't look bad until we stripped it down, but I knew, having done Land Rovers up before, I knew it would be worse than it looked. It was the passenger side bulkhead that was really bad. We intended to have a patch welded in it, but my mechanic said, look, we can weld it and weld it, we'll be welding it every single year, you'd be cheaper putting a new bulkhead. And then it needed about £700 worth of welding on the chassis, so we decided we were cheaper putting a new chassis in it as well. So I was going to get my mechanic to do it, but I decided, because it's going to be a long-winded restoration and I don't want to be under the time pressure trying to source parts and maybe putting it back together with second-hand parts that have got a limited lifespan, I've decided to do it myself. So this was the new galvanised chassis. Debatable painting it. A lot of people don't like the fact I painted it. I do. I didn't want bling on show. I think that having a galvanised chassis on show is like having a gold chain round your neck. So the chassis, we did it with Mordant T-Wash to acid etch it. We cleaned it off. We did it with 2 coats of etch primer. And then we did it with 3 coats of red oxide. Again, a lot of people don't think I should have done that. I like red oxide. And then we did it with this MIO chassis paint. So it's a mica cyan oxide paint. It's for boat hulls, and it is designed to go over zinc and galvanised steel. It was about 70 quid for 5 litres, and it's used about 2.5 to do the chassis twice. It does take a long time to set, this mica cyan oxide paint, but now it has set, it's like glass. I'm really impressed with it. We need to wash the chassis down and just touch up any chips where we've been working on it. But the thing we're going to discuss today is paints. So a lot of people said you don't want to be using that, just use Buzzweld. You can use this Buzzweld paint. It's designed for Land Rover chassis. You can just paint a chassis with it. It goes straight on galvanised, it goes straight on zinc. You don't need a primer. It was dubbed as like the best thing since sliced bread. And I'll be honest, my experience of painting stuff, I didn't believe it. I just didn't believe that you could pay 140 quid for a rattle can chassis kit and I'd just be able to spray over that. So I've done it the way I wanted to do it, and I'm happy with the results. Now, in contrast, I've got a couple of second-hand trailing arms for the front that were shot blasted. There's no rust on them. They were done with Buzzweld in November. They haven't been outside. They've been sat in the other shed, which has got a tin roof on, so there will be humidity and condensation. That's 2 coats of Buzzweld paint, and the rust comes straight back through. I'm not saying it's awful stuff. I've had similar where you've just done, like that axle, we shot blasted it and we just painted it with 1 coat of red oxide, and it's similar, it rusted. Not much, but it needed rubbed down. That's now had 2 more coats of red oxide. Gonna let it harden and then we'll do it with the mica cyan oxide. The front axle hasn't rusted because we did that with 2 coats of red oxide, and I got some 2-pack black epoxy primer on it just so it wouldn't rust. This axle was different, we had to send it back to be welded. But you know, I don't think there is any paint system that is like a miracle cure that stops rust. Even Hammerite paint is really good, I've used it a lot, but it just covers up the rust. It reacts with the rust to form a hard coating, but the rust is still there underneath, and eventually the Hammerite, especially in damp conditions, just peels off. It peels off in sheets. So these are going to be rubbed down. Ignore the Buzzweld, but they're going to be rubbed down again, and they're going to have 2 coats of red oxide, 2 coats of the MIO chassis paint, and they're going to be allowed to harden long enough before they're fitted to the chassis. We're under no time constraints here. I'd rather get sufficient paint on than let it rust. Something I learnt years ago was like Ford cars only had 2 coats of paint and they rusted. A Saab back in the 1980s I think had 7 coats of paint and they didn't rust. So my kind of idea is loads of primer, loads of coats of top coat, just nice thin coats, water the paint down. You know, I just don't think you can do anything with an all-in-one paint. Even Hammerite would look beautiful on that, but it would have peeled off eventually.